I've learned when I meet people with cancer, it's more of a spiritual and an emotional disease than it is a physical. And I don't want to insult anybody. I know how that's going to sound, but I can usually tell by talking to someone who has cancer whether they're going to thrive and conquer or whether they're going to suffer and die. And it often has to do with what they say and even their nonverbal communications. And I'll give you an example.
Hey everyone, Dr. Josh Axe here. Welcome to the Ancient Health Podcast. Today I have actually my co-founder of Ancient Nutrition, Jordan Rubin, with me today. And Jordan is also a New York Times best-selling author. He is the co-founder, as I mentioned, of Ancient Nutrition. And Jordan's written I don't know what the book count is now. I'm going to throw out there. You correct me after I say 50 books or so. And he's probably the best innovator that I know when it comes to supplements. And also he has an amazing story of healing from Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, major inflammatory bowel disease, and also cancer and some other health issues. And so Jordan has some amazing story of, and I always really love to be able to hear from people that not only are experts, but they healed themselves from something and some sort of crisis. So we're going to talk a lot about gut health today. We're also going to talk about vitamins and supplements, the things that work, the things that don't work, ingredients. And so you'll really want to pay attention to the part where we dive deep into vitamins, supplements, and also gut health and how that impacts your entire body, everything from your hormones to your liver to your brain. And so Jordan, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Josh. I was thinking last night, you and I talk about 4 times a day. So it's kind of funny how one of those is going to be recorded. And my real thought was, Josh, I'd love for people to hear what we talk about when we're not recording it on camera, because those are really the best conversations when we're spitballing, ideating, when we're talking about things that we believe could change the world, but no one's ever heard of. So hopefully we'll extract some of that today, but excited to be here for sure.
Yeah. We'll dive into some of that. I do want people to continue to know who you are. And Jordan, I actually want to jump ahead. I didn't tell you I was going to ask you about this. So here's some things that, that people probably hadn't heard before. Obviously, a lot of people know your story of battling ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. Tell that story, but then would you also weave it into the story of, and I want to do a longer story on this on just a show on cancer, but talk to us a little bit about sort of your health trials that you have gone through.
Absolutely. And I'm going to try to do it in as succinct a fashion as possible. And I want to still at some point convey the emotions that I went through. I was turning 19 years old when I first discovered these digestive issues. And I didn't, discovering is the wrong term. I was overwhelmed with digestive issues when I was turning 19 years old. And I grew up the son of a chiropractor, naturopathic doctor. I ate better than most. Sure, I had some stress, but this was something I never could have imagined. I was devastated. I ended up having to drop out of college. I went down to 104 pounds and I'm 6 feet tall in a wheelchair. I had a lot of friends and a great life prior to getting sick, but when I was ill, I didn't want people to visit me. I had an embarrassing disease. I described my condition as being trapped in a prison that was my own body. I was in the bathroom 15 to 30 times a day. Eventually, I couldn't walk. I couldn't see very well. I had every ancillary condition you can think of, from candida infections, lots of different parasitic infections. I had bladder, prostate. I had heart infections, the kind that you get from COVID complications. I had endocarditis and pericarditis, but these were all based on this wasting disease that I had due to the involvement of Crohn's being from my duodenum all the way to the rectal area. It's always great to talk about all these physiological conditions of the gut. But the hopelessness was really the worst part. Josh, I visited 69 medical experts, and it's interesting because your audience, I'm sure, understands what you went through last year with your own health challenge. And it's amazing, Josh, how many well-wishing people give you advice, give you doctors to see all over the world. And you kind of feel like it's a hamster wheel or a wild goose chase. And so I visited 69 medical experts, tried hundreds of products. Some of them, as I look back, were kind of dangerous and unproven, but I was so desperate.
Yeah.
I met a man, the 70th person that we were looking for help from, and he said something very different. He said, Jordan, if you follow a health plan based on the Bible, you will be well. And Josh, I can't tell you how important that encouragement and that infusion of faith was to me. Now, if I back up a little bit, I had my moment of faith when I stood in front of my mother's closet at the time. I went back after being in college, having to live with my parents and being taken care of like an infant. But one day I felt God give me the encouragement to stand up and ask my mom to take my picture. I call this the before picture, and I am so grateful that God gave me that mustard seed size faith, because my mom didn't want to take the picture. This was before digital cameras and Photoshop, but I was 111 pounds with this gnarly beard in my boxer shorts, looking like what people describe as a concentration camp victim. And I just knew that my mom needed to take my picture in my valley of the shadow of death so that when I was healed, the world would see the miracle, that picture that's worth 1,000 words. And I'm so grateful that I did that. But ultimately, my faith was low. My hope was even lower. I didn't smile. I didn't laugh. I was miserable. But when this man told me that I could be well from following a biblical health plan, and I was a man of faith, and I knew whatever helped me get well, I was going to share with whoever would listen. It was just amazing. And I couldn't wait to talk to this man whenever I had the opportunity by phone. He was in California, I was in Florida, but months later, I got on a plane in my wheelchair. You also know what this is like, Josh. It's horrific.
Yeah.
And I went to California as someone who was sick and lost. And I came back from California not only healed, but I came back with a passion and a purpose to see the health of this nation and world transformed one life at a time. I was 22 years old, turning 22, and I knew what my purpose was, and I followed a diet that is today you could say is based on real foods. And a lot of what the leading health experts are talking about today, I learned about raw cultured dairy, fermented veggies, grass-fed meats, certain fruits and veggie juices, walking on the beach barefoot, getting sunshine, living a life of positivity and imagining myself well. So that was ultimately the journey of healing. I ended up writing some books in the early days. Probably the most well known is The Maker's Diet, and I titled it The 40-Day Health Experience That Will Change Your Life Forever. It changed mine, and I've been blessed to see others' lives impacted by it. That was 27 years ago, and since then, through various companies and books and projects, I've been sharing this same message of health and hope, and I will probably share it till the day I die, which will be 120 years of age, like Moses.
Let's go. I love it. So another question, Jordan, and I want to dive into some things here. But anybody right now that is struggling with digestive health, let's say we have somebody listening and they have inflammatory bowel disease. Now, I think that what you did then is fantastic. I think what you do today would be similar, but also there maybe be parts that be a little bit different. Walk me through. Just here's what I'm going to ask. Just simply walk me through three things. One, what would your breakfast, lunch, and dinner look like today if you had inflammatory bowel disease? Number two, what are the supplements that you would take if you had inflammatory bowel disease? Number three, what are some of those lifestyle, spiritual, whatever sort of things that you would do today if you were in that same situation you were with inflammatory bowel disease when you were 19 years old?
Well, since I talk to people every week who are dealing with this, it's pretty easy for me to rattle this off. But let me say, if you're somebody who is in a acute situation, inflammatory bowel disease is often chronic, but there are acute situations people call flare-ups. It's what gets you in the hospital. It's what causes you not to be able to eat anything. Normally, I have somebody consume solid animal foods, but usually think of it as a one pot bone broth scenario. So if someone were to say, what do I eat to get out of a flare up? What do I eat that's most soothing to the bowel? Think of chicken in bone broth. You make bone broth with chicken, very few other ingredients. You eat the chicken, drink or eat the broth. Same thing could be said for meat. I guess you could say that for fish as well. It's a little harder for people to jump into sort of an all fish soup diet, but undoubtedly a all animal, what they call now nose to tail diet in the short term is the best way to eliminate allergens, eliminate blood sugar spikes, and starve the microbes that are imbalanced in your gut. So I always start people off with a bone broth cleanse. Make sure to eat some meat as well. And then if you, let's just say that you're a functional person with Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, severe celiac disease, diverticulitis, or IBS-D, which is IBS with predominant diarrhea. I think a diet that is centered around healthy animal foods, I would expand to eggs. I would expand to other sources of animal foods like fish, particularly fatty fish. I would consume soft vegetables. So I don't think raw vegetables or raw vegetable juices are smart for an inflamed gut. And as you progress, you can consume certain fruits. Believe it or not, mango is amazing for the gut. Blueberry is amazing for the gut, very well chewed. There's certain compounds in those fruits, polyphenols, that help act as prebiotics, but they don't cause gas, bloating, indigestion, etc. And then if you're going to consume dairy, which I usually at this point would wait a little bit, make it fermented, whole dairy, primarily from sheep, goats, water buffalo, or if it's cow's milk, make sure it's A2. So these are, to your point, not dissimilar to what I recommended in the Maker's Diet, in Patient Heal Thyself, and those books. But, and I would say, Josh, in my life, my diet's still very similar and centered around those healing foods, as is my family's.
Yeah. So just to rehash what Jordan said, it's a lot of bone broth, a lot of cooked meat, some organs, some cooked vegetables, and a small amount of fruit. He mentioned blueberries. He mentioned mango. The polyphenols are helpful. I know that one of the things I recommended was pears, like a lot of times baked pears, and so, but very, very simple, easy diet. Now let's talk about the supplements.
Well, number one, the first supplement I used when I was following this healing diet was a probiotic from soil-based organisms, or SBOs. Now, Josh, if someone's watching or listening and they say, but I've tried probiotics, they don't work, or I've watched a podcast or video and they say probiotics don't work, I agree for the most part. I tried 50 brands of probiotics and I used bottles a day when I was sick, and they didn't move the needle at all until I tried this little known probiotic that had soil-based organisms and minerals from the earth. And I began to see great results. And I have consumed those types of probiotics for the last nearly 30 years. When I travel overseas, I double up. When I'm under stress, I double up. And this is my go-to, and it is radically different, radically better than traditional probiotics that I believe really don't work consistently, especially if you have a damaged gut. So number one would be a probiotic with SBOs. Number two, I think a broad spectrum digestive enzyme with meals is critical, particularly one that helps you digest carbohydrates, because when you have IBD or severe IBS, I believe that certain starches in grains and potatoes and sugars, as well as certain proteins, we've all heard of gluten, can be very problematic. If you consume a broad spectrum digestive enzyme, it helps you digest what you're eating, because what you don't digest doesn't simply disappear. I've always said that when you're eating something and you can't digest it, it isn't simply that you're not getting the most out of that food. Whatever is undigested goes into the gut and rots. Think about it. It's like rotting, the worst garbage when you leave your house for a week or two and you forget to take out the trash. That's what's in your colon when you
Well,
can't digest
Jordan,
food.
there are so many people today. I mean, the increase of people with, with SIBO today, per your example, has gone up, dramatically. Yeah.
And here's one, Josh, that's good for an acute gut situation. And I've recommended this to you at certain times and others, some type of clay. Now, you wrote the book Eat Dirt. The first book that I was a part of was called SBOs Beyond Probiotics, and we talked about pica and dirt eating. There are certain
Nice.
clays that are either bentonite or montmorillonite. A lot of them are for the face. They're like for face masks. But if you will consume either a liquid clay or a powdered clay that you mix in water, it helps to absorb and adsorb toxins. It absorbs heavy metals, it absorbs gases and other harmful toxins. And it's a great way to stop, particularly diarrhea, if you have it from any or every cause known to man. If you do not know what's going on, consume that. And if you think about it, Josh, the medications out there like Pepto-Bismol and others, they have a base in either a mineral, in this case it's bismuth, or some type of clay like kaopectate, if you've heard of that. It's a
Yeah.
combination of kaolin clay and pectin from fruit. So I think the top three would be SBO probiotics, broad spectrum digestive enzyme, and some type of liquid clay if you have a preponderance of loose bowels or diarrhea, gas, bloating. Those are all good. There's many others, but those are the ones that I think are the front line for conquering digestive illness.
It's great. It's great. Let's talk about the third pillar, or the third thing that I'd mentioned here, and that is sort of lifestyle. I think that you and I are both aware that there are everything from sleep to stress to not enough sun to not enough connection to community, those sort of things. But what are some of those lifestyle factors that were game changers for you to maybe help with your mindset and help with your emotional and mental health? Was that part of this when you were healing yourself?
Josh, it was huge. And I'm going to share this for those who are very sick. I went out to California in a wheelchair and I was ill for 2 years, and every day was either as bad or worse than the day before. I didn't have remission. I didn't have hope. I had nightmare after nightmare. And when I went to California, even though I now had hope that this method would heal me or would help, I still was in a pattern of negativity. And so I remember telling the man whose name was Bud Keith, he passed away years ago, who helped direct me to the biblical diet. He said, Jordan, why are you always frowning? And I said, I'm Jewish. I'm a Messianic Jew. I'm a Jewish believer. But I said, in Yiddish, they have a word for frowning called ungeblusen. It just means you're always having a sour face. And it was also matched with a fear that I would have a stomach cramp or have to run to the bathroom or whatever. And he said, I want to challenge you. He said it a little stronger than this. I don't want you to say a negative word or look like you're depressed. I've got a bunch of small children here, and I've asked them to tell me, what does Jordan look like, or what is he saying? And that was hard for me, Josh, because my
Yeah.
family, like many ethnic families, they act superstitious. They say negative things. I remember my grandmother, anytime she said anything good, the Jewish version of knock on wood is like kinahura poo poo, because you're spitting, because evil spirits will hear you. It's just stupid, but everything is negative. And unfortunately, my father, who I have 50% of my genetics from, he tends to be very negative. And
Yeah.
so I had to learn not only to speak positive, but think positive. And it's interesting. The Bible says, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. And as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. But I've learned that what you speak can alter what you think just the same way. And so I remember having this shift. I'm not well. I have a disease diagnosis. And in 5 minutes, I might have a stomach cramp like I've been knifed in the gut. But what about those 4 minutes in between? And I started thanking God that I was well during the 4 minutes instead of sick every fifth minute, Josh. And I know what I mean by this because you battled this. The battlefield of the mind is so amazing and so
Yeah,
hard to win. And you
it is.
mentioned my cancer recovery, which we'll talk about in another program. But I've learned when I meet people with cancer, it's more of a spiritual and an emotional disease than it is a physical. And I don't want to insult anybody. I know how that's going to sound, but I can usually tell by talking to someone who has cancer whether they're going to thrive and conquer or whether they're going to suffer and die. And it often has to do with what they say and even their nonverbal communications. And I'll give you an example. We go around saying that we're diabetic. People say that I'm a diabetic, and they say it 1,000 times when they say once I'm healthy or once I'm overcoming. That's a terrible stacked deck. So if you are dealing with a serious illness, physical, mental, or a relationship challenge, or your kid is gone off the rails, and I know about all these things, by the way, I believe you have to claim healing or victory in the moments when you have that, because most people who are sick are not sick every second. They don't have pain every second. They don't have discomfort every second. Start thanking God and believing for healing the times when you don't feel symptoms. And I believe combining that with the right diet and lifestyle, your moments of health will expand. And mine went from every 5 minutes to 30 minutes to an hour to a week to a month to a year. And I believe that was a critical component to what helped contribute to my healing. And just like what you talk about, Josh, mindset medicine, it is so powerful. People call it placebo. I call it the faith that can move mountains. But if you want to be more than a conqueror, you have to think healing and speak healing. You absolutely can't do anything else, because winning against an incurable disease is like an Olympic gold medal. That's how difficult and how rare it is in the average world statistically.
Yeah, yeah. Life and death is in the power of the tongue, as I know I've heard you say, and obviously that's out of the Bible. Jordan, I want to continue this conversation on digestion and then move into supplements. And so as we're talking about digestion, what are we're seeing now a lot of people hear about not only probiotics, right? We've been hearing about probiotics for 20 years, so much so that there's like probiotic. I think I saw a probiotic pizza one time. I mean, it's
Yes,
literally definitely yogurt. I mean, it's in everything. And but now there are these prebiotics, and then now there's postbiotics, and then there's, not to confuse people even more, parabiotics. So I don't think a lot of people know what these are. Talk to me about what is a probiotic, a prebiotic, a postbiotic, and a parabiotic. Tell me what they are, why we need them, and some examples of each that we could recognize.
absolutely. Before I get into that, I will say that fermented foods contain all four of these biotics, if you will. First of all, biotic means life or bios. Let's start with pre, because we'll go down the trail here. A prebiotic is food for probiotics. But this is a real challenge, Josh, because if you listen to health experts today, some of them say probiotics don't really work, prebiotics work. But if you think probiotics are everywhere, everything's a prebiotic now. And the truth is, Josh, everything
Yeah,
really is, because everything you eat feeds bacteria. The problem is, are they
yeah.
feeding the right bacteria? When you deal with IBS, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, diverticulitis, celiac disease, or even a
Candida.
functional bowel issue, I
Yeah.
believe that prebiotic fibers can be very challenging. So people talk about FOS, fructo oligosaccharides, inulin from chicory. They are, in my mind, a gas bomb if you have a bad gut. I know that they can feed your friendly bacteria, but not in every instance. However, not all prebiotics are bad. There are two types of prebiotics, Josh, that I think are amazing. Number one would be polyphenols. Those are
Mm.
antioxidants in plants primarily. Think berries. Now, one that I love is called Trafala. Trafala means three fruits, and it's an Ayurvedic combination of three berries the most well-known of which is Indian gooseberry or amla berry. And Josh, you and I have talked, and I'll mention this in a moment. Trafala not only can help the gut acting as a prebiotic, but it can actually stimulate longevity when combined with probiotics. So I think that's amazing. Another prebiotic I like is called a bacteriophage. Now, not to spook people, but bacteriophages are friendly viruses. It's called a bacteriophage because it latches on to E. coli, which is often pathogenic or dangerous if your gut is messed up, and it destroys it. Looks kind of like a spider under a microscope. These bacteriophages are found in some cheeses, found in ocean water, found in certain people's tears and secretions. This is an amazing category of living organisms that is being used around the world to treat acne, to treat certain autoimmune diseases. I highly recommend, as prebiotics, look at polyphenolic rich fruits. I mentioned mango, I mentioned blueberries. Trafala is an amazing prebiotic supplement, as is a phage or bacteriophage. So those are the prebiotics, and we're only a fourth of the way there.
Yeah, so obviously we've hit on people know what probiotics are. They're the good bacteria. We hit on prebiotics. Let's talk about postbiotics now.
Okay, well, I'm gonna cut back to parabiotics. So
Okay.
probiotics are living organisms, and I've always said in my seminars, when you eat a fermented food, think yogurt, kefir, kimchi, apple cider vinegar, kombucha, kvass. There's many. The probiotics are good, but what the probiotics create is better. Those are metabolic products. Those are organic acids, etc. However, when you get a really sour yogurt or a really sour kefir or a really sour kimchi, the probiotics that were alive end up dying. And when they die, they leave information behind. It's a tough concept to grasp, but think of it this way. Dead probiotics don't lie. When you consume probiotics that have been exhausted, they gave their life for something, believe it or not, they cause your probiotics in your gut that are already there to come to life. And I love this analogy, Josh, because you and I both share the Christian faith, and it makes a lot of sense in many instances that something has to die for something else to live. So a dead probiotic has cellular materials that can cause your good bacteria, your probiotics, to come to life. A dead probiotic is called a parabiotic, and it is a great way to stimulate your own probiotics. Best of all, when you consume parabiotics or heat killed or dead probiotics, they have no problem getting to your gut because they're not living, they're not subjected to stomach acid or bile or anything like that. Those parabiotics can be amazing, and they create postbiotics. Postbiotics, lactic acid, it's what makes yogurt and sauerkraut sour. Acetic acid, which is what makes apple cider vinegar sour. Glucuronic acid is a postbiotic. That's what makes kombucha have its tart flavor. Believe it or not, certain vitamins and minerals are created by probiotics and can be called postbiotics. You and I have talked a lot lately about urolithins, which the gut bacteria convert from plant food rich in something called elagitannins. That would be pomegranate, walnut, and raspberry. So postbiotics can also be butyric acid. I believe a postbiotic you would find in a humate or shilajit could be humic acid or fulvic acid. So these are absolutely amazing. And Josh, my prediction is that if you fast forward 10 years from now, there will be as many or more postbiotic supplements as there are probiotics, because only certain probiotics work. And in my mind, the ultimate formulation would be prebiotics from polyphenols or bacteriophages, probiotics from soil-based organisms or beneficial yeast, Saccharomyces boulardii, which is an entirely different story. Prebiotics, meaning heat-killed lactobacillus, plus the postbiotics they've created. And Josh, by the way, we have one such product called SBO Probiotics Trinity, and we created it for exactly that purpose. But that to me is the model gut health formula. My daughter, unfortunately, who doesn't live at home anymore, had a gut issue and was hospitalized. And as soon as she was out, she came and picked up SBO Probiotics Trinity. That is the first line of defense for future issues, and one that I believe supports digestive and immune system health amazingly. But I'm telling you, if you're out there thinking that you're going to drink a prebiotic soda with chicory or tapioca syrup, I'm sure that it will increase your bacteria. But if you've got a damaged gut, you got to be very, very careful about consuming things that are labeled as prebiotics. And unfortunately, most probiotics that you find in the store are not alive when they get to your gut, but they're dead on arrival. So again, think of polyphenols or bacteriophage. Think of these heat-killed prebiotics that bring to life your probiotics, which should come from SBOs and beneficial yeast. And postbiotics are the wonderful compounds that probiotics create that you find in almost every fermented food.
Yeah, it's great. And the thing, I love that you were able to explain this so succinctly and easy to understand, because we're going to continue to see these terms all over the place in supplements and marketing material. And as Jordan talked about, by the way, if you're, if you're looking for a supplement that has great probiotics that are soil-based organisms, prebiotics, postbiotics, and prebiotics, which are really all essential for helping transform your gut, then the product, Jordan and I both take this regularly. This is the probiotic I take. It's called Probiotic Trinity. It's a newer probiotic. You can go and buy it at ancientnutrition.com. It's an Ancient Nutrition product, or go to Amazon and buy. You just type in Probiotic Trinity, Ancient Nutrition, or go to your local health food store. And if they don't carry it, take a picture and say, hey, would you start carrying this probiotic at your local health food store? Just show them a picture of Probiotic Trinity. And we called it Trinity because of the pre, post, and pro, but also we have para in there as well. But all that being said, I really think that, again, if you want to transform your gut health, that is the probiotic I take. I've noticed the biggest difference with, and we have so many people who've taken that and raved about that product. If you look at the reviews on Amazon and Ancient Nutrition, people are just saying, this probiotic worked when no other one would. It's because it's not just a probiotic. It's all of those things that can help transform your gut microbiome. So Jordan, I have another question here for you. This is more of a random question. And by the way, I think this one's going to be hard for you. I know you'll be able to do it. If you were stuck on a desert island for the next 10 years and you could only bring 5 supplements with you, what 5 supplements would you bring?
I'm so glad you said 5. I knew you were going to go deserted island. I thought you were going to go food, which would be even harder. This is in no particular order, but one of them has to be an organ supplement or a glandular. It is hands down something that I wouldn't be without. The most nutrient dense foods on the planet are animal organs: liver, kidney, heart. And you've obviously heard this from all 3 hosts on the Ancient Health podcast, but when you consume certain substances, they impart a similar benefit to your body. It's the like supports like. And when it comes to organs, when you consume some thyroid, there are peptides in that thyroid that support your own thyroid. Same goes for liver. Same goes for kidney, heart, spleen, pituitary. So I would say a multi-organ product. We talked about a comprehensive pre, para, and postbiotic. What's great, Josh, is that's just one product, and I get all 4 of those in there. I'm going to go digestive enzyme. I think that's really, really important. I would have to say minerals. Now, I could say multivitamin mineral, but by far, minerals are the most important. That's what's missing in our soil. We absolutely need them. So at minimum, a multi-mineral. Certainly would love some fat-soluble vitamins with it. And I would say some type of collagen complex, whether it's a bone broth protein or a collagen that has 10 types. I think that's pretty solid. Now, look, I've got green superfood, probably number 6, et cetera. But I would say that the 5 that I mentioned are products that are quintessential supplements because you largely can't get them in your diet, and most people won't and don't eat foods containing them. So those are my 5. I'll say it again: an multi-organ supplement, probiotic with pre, para, and postbiotics in it as well, a broad spectrum digestive enzyme with meals, and a collagen complex. I think I'm forgetting one, Josh. Did I only give you 4?
No, I think you only talked about 4.
Okay, so I would say this, that for the average person, especially if you're on a deserted island, I think a green superfood formula is pretty ideal because it, again, will give you a combination of these rare and exotic superfoods that we don't get: powerful plant pigments, polyphenols, small amount of fiber. So that would be my 5th. And wow, that's great. I thought I was already off the island
I mean,
with my 5.
I don't know that mine's any different. I think that's a pretty solid, pretty solid line. Because you think about, okay, you could do turmeric or an anti-inflammatory herbal supplement. You could do multi-mushroom. That's one actually I thought you might sneak in there at number 5. I thought you'd have an internal. I could have probably predicted your top 5 because we talked so much, but I didn't know if we were going to get mushrooms or greens there. So, anyways, that was a great list, and that's probably the average list that most people should be taking. When you think about people, just whether you're on a desert island or, which I'm not on a desert island. I'm in Puerto Rico right now recording this. So it's actually a rainforest island. But, I think whether you're on a rainforest island or you're, in the United States or Europe or Australia, where I know a lot of people listen to the show, that's a pretty good top 5 if you want to know just generally what are the top 5 supplements you should take. If you live up north, don't get sun, you may throw vitamin D in there. But overall, solid list, Jordan. Jordan, one of the things that I know that I learned from you on first, by the way, this is before we even met. I was reading something or watching a video you did on synthetic vitamins versus what you had labeled, I believe, real food vitamins. Okay. And so when you look at today, sort of the landscape of vitamin and supplement companies, and by the way, there are so many more now. I mean, think about how many supplement companies there were 30 years ago. Now, I mean, there are probably 100 times the brands. I mean, it's really, really exploded. But when you think about supplements, and let's talk about vitamins, what's the difference between what you would call a synthetic vitamin versus maybe a whole food vitamin? Walk us through what the best, and maybe give us a hierarchy in terms of this is bad, this is okay, this is good, this is great, in terms of when you're looking at if you're buying specifically a vitamin or mineral supplement.
Josh, well, I'd love to take credit for bringing this whole food vitamin or mineral message to the world. I can't because
It was probably
I think you
Royal
and
Lee
I
or
both,
somebody. But
yeah, you and I both know that there was a pretty interesting lineage, and you could point to a few people in history that made the statement: a vitamin and a mineral is not simply the chemical component that it is fractionated and boiled down to, and I mean that literally. I'm going to use vitamin C as an example. When you eat an orange, which I was telling Josh right before this, I rushed to grab a snack, which was a delicious orange. I love oranges. The 60 milligrams or so of vitamin C that I got in the orange was combined with bioflavonoids like rutin, which is an amazing plant-based compound. It also has a small amount of minerals, a large amount of electrolytes, actually potassium, I should say, and many other constituents. But if you look on the average vitamin C or multivitamin supplement, it says vitamin C and in parentheses, ascorbic acid. Here's what I want to say to you. Ascorbic acid is not vitamin C. Ascorbic acid is one component of vitamin C that only works well when it's with its other components. And so fractionated, isolated, and synthesized vitamins and minerals have their place. They act like drugs more than they do food vitamins, but they are far different. than what you would get from your food. The vitamin C that you get from broccoli, peppers, Brussels sprouts, and oranges, lemons, grapefruit, and limes, very different than what you find in supplements. When you buy a supplement that contains vitamin C, you want to make sure the vitamin C is absorbable. And sometimes you get it from a food like acerola cherry or camu camu, which is a berry from Peru. And there's others. If you are going to take a vitamin C supplement that you want higher amounts of vitamin C, there are ways to get your vitamins more absorbable by combining them with other supplements. For example, I like to use a lipid metabolite vitamin C because an orange has a little bit of fat in it, which helps the vitamin C become absorbed into the cell, which is coated with fat. So when it comes to vitamins and minerals, I like to look for organic, fermented. There's a type of mineral called enzyme activated. All of these vitamins and minerals have been bound to food through a biological process that allows you to not just consume a fraction of a vitamin, but the entire food complex. And that goes for vitamin E, for vitamin C, B vitamins, definitely minerals. Josh, we've talked about recently how excited we are about a mineral concept where you take spirulina, which is a superfood du jour, and infuse minerals into its 18 amino acids. So what you're really getting is a fortified spirulina with iron or with copper or with manganese. And so these are the types of things we look at. How do you get food nutrients into the body, not simply chemicals made in a laboratory?
Yeah, and one of the things I think that everyone needs to understand is that these nutrients don't function in isolation. They function typically in a food with the other cofactors and enzymes and antioxidants, all of these other things that allow you to fully absorb them and digest them in a specific form. I get questions constantly from people about what the best type of magnesium is, right? Or the best type. I mean, that's the one the most, by the way. But I
Yes.
get questions sometimes about other forms of certain nutrients. And I know for you, I think, you're probably a big fan of like a chelate or something that most resembles a food that has some of the other things with it. But talk to us about an example like magnesium, like that.
Well, everyone's excited about magnesium glycinate or magnesium
Yeah.
bisglycinate. And magnesium glycinate is a mineral, magnesium, which is a metal. Though it's technically a metal. It's a mined metal combined with glycine. Now, why is a chelated mineral, chelated, bound to a single amino acid better than magnesium oxide, which is mined from the earth? Well, because the body recognizes proteins or amino acids because every mineral in nature is in the form of food. You can't find a mineral out there that is on its own that you're just eating. And so when a mineral is bound to a single amino acid, there's a better absorption. But I don't agree that that's the ultimate form. What we're excited about, Josh, I mentioned this spirulina bound minerals. Spirulina has chlorophyll, which is the green pigment found in plants. And it's very similar to hemoglobin in the body, which is the oxygen carrying protein in your blood. The only difference is that chlorophyll has magnesium at the center of that pigment, whereas hemoglobin has iron. So my perfect magnesium would be an enzyme activated magnesium bound to 20 amino acids in the form of spirulina. And that's exactly the type of magnesium we use in our products. In fact, we've got an ancient nutrition magnesium. In this particular case, it's bound to brown rice protein. So 20 amino acids in brown rice protein. And we have all these amazing foods and herbs combined into it. Now, what's interesting, Josh, is our magnesium in ancient nutrition doesn't have 500 milligrams or 1,000. It's got 300 milligrams. But when people say, I want a vitamin or mineral that has high potency, people assume potency means volume. That's not true.
Yeah.
Potency
Yeah.
means the ability for you to hit the target you're aiming for. And I can give you an example, Josh. As you know, my son Joshua plays college football, and I didn't realize that his team, all of the players who play in Saturday games, get a double dose of our ancient nutrition magnesium the night before. Now, obviously, it'd be great if they ate well all the time, but their strength coach, who I introduced to ancient nutrition, believes that our magnesium gives the players an ability to play better, play longer. And you see a lot of guys in football games that they looks like they pull a hamstring, but it's really a cramp due to dehydration because
Yeah.
these young men are not eating a magnesium rich diet. And Lyle, the strength coach, called me in a panic. He said, Jordan, you're sold out of ancient nutrition magnesium. I need some. So I had our team get our team
You
at
pulled some
Ancient
strength
get
of
the
the dad's,
magnesium, yeah, to his team.
yeah.
So, but Josh, I think what's important about whole food vitamins and minerals, don't get hung up on the amount of milligrams of magnesium or
Yeah.
vitamin C. I'd rather have a lime or a shot of lime juice than 1,000 milligrams of ascorbic acid vitamin C. I'd rather have a whole food magnesium at 300 milligrams than 2,000 milligrams of magnesium sulfate or Epsom salt. You're going to absorb some of it, but very, very little. And I think the best magnesium is an enzyme activated multi protein chelated magnesium, like you would find in Ancient Nutrition's magnesium, Ancient Nutrients magnesium, which I love that product.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people realize. And by the way, this is not a promotion for ancient nutrition. I think we just wanted to dive into vitamins and supplements. And I wanted to bring up that, there are a lot of companies, even that have packaging and they'll put food on there. And really, it's really just oftentimes it's still synthetic or it's still maybe just a step up from that and still not real. And so, Jordan, one of the things I've respected about you for so long is your attention to detail and knowing the science and also knowing the ancient history of the importance of getting these food-based things. Because you mentioned potency. You were one of the first people I also heard talk about the importance of it's not potency, it's absorption, right? It's how close it is to food. What are the other things with it? And so if you really want to get good results, it's really important that something really resembles food. And Jordan, what he's created at Ancient Nutrition does that more than any other company by far, not even close. That's out there. Jordan, I want to kind of switch gears and mention something. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I recently read a book by David Sinclair called Lifespan. And then I started listening as well to some of our colleagues and friends, people like Gabrielle Lyons, and then there's other people. I'm right now listening to this debate between people that are more plant-based vegetarian, like David Sinclair, and then some of the other people that are more of the carnivores or high protein, like a Gabrielle Lyons, or even Peter Adia, or even Andrew Huberman. I think they sit more on this other side too. And David Sinclair was talking about how bad methionine is. He was saying a methionine-rich diet, which is meat-based. But one of the things I noticed with these scientists, they'll take this one thing and like take it to the moon. But I remember us talking years ago about methionine, but also balancing it out with glycine and proline and some other amino acids. Talk to us. And you gave this great analogy. I'd love you to share with everyone, because to me, it was a really great example of how we look at omega fatty acids today of 3 and 6. You need to have a balance. So what is your professional opinion on animal protein intake? Is methionine or too much animal protein bad? Or are they just sort of looking at things through, too narrow of a lens?
I would say that they are looking at things through too narrow of a lens. But let me be clear and say this. As I've matured, that's a nice way of saying aged, I have become much more a student than a teacher. I
Yeah.
can't share on a subject if I don't listen and understand the opposite point of view. And so I have spent time in the last year studying the starchivore movement, which I would say would be epitomized by Dr. John McDougall, who's a great man. I
Yeah.
have looked into carnivore diets with other friends who have promoted such a diet, more plant-based, more omnivore, fasting, mimicking, you name it. And I will say this, that the methionine argument really, in my mind, falls short. I think, Josh, the tenets of that message is that as you age, you don't want to increase certain markers in your body, IGF-1, which is a
Yeah.
growth hormone, mTOR, which could be considered really good if you're a young athlete, but not really good if you're someone who's aging. And it is true that methionine-rich foods, which are what is labeled foods that are rich in essential amino acids. By the way, you need methionine in order to grow properly. It became essential because, I don't know if you know this, Josh, methionine is the number one nutrient that causes chicken hens, to lay eggs. Without methionine, they will not lay a significant number of eggs. So that's why it became an essential amino acid. But here's the issue. I don't believe animal food is the problem. It's the way we're eating animal food, because we are the first generation ever to eat muscle building proteins to the exclusion of connective tissue proteins. We are quite literally a brothless generation. My ancestors, your ancestors, and they came from different places, Josh, from our heritage.
Yep.
They never ate animal foods without consuming the joints, ligaments, tendons, and edible bones, or at minimum, making a bone broth. They couldn't afford to waste it. And my research has told me that 20 to 30% of the protein you would get from animal foods should be collagen. And collagen contains glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline. And guess what it's low in? Methionine. Muscle meat is high in methionine. By the way, so is pea protein, rice protein, hemp protein, beans, legumes, etc. High methionine, low glycine, proline, hydroxyproline. When you consume animals the way they were intended to be consumed, with the connective tissue proteins, the collagen coming from broth, that balance prohibits methionine from causing decreased lifespan, increased mortality, increased risk of cancers, which some of the anti-animal protein or methionine group is talking about. So I believe in order to achieve longevity and a great health span and lifespan, you need to balance your proteins, to your point earlier, the same way we balance omegas. Our children today, Gen Z, whatever the latest generation is, I believe they have a diet that is 99 to 99.9% muscle building protein and virtually no collagen in their diet. And we are suffering as a result. And it's amazing. Josh, you and I are both big sports fans. The number of sports injuries in soft tissue, I'm talking about ligaments, tendons, even bones, is staggering, unprecedented. It's not because of turf. It's not because of throwing too much. Your cousin and one of my closest friends, his son at age 17 had Tommy John surgery. Tommy John surgery, repair of the ulnar collateral ligament in the elbow, happened probably 1 out of 1,000 20 years ago. Now it's 1 out of 2. The answer is not eliminating methionine-rich foods. It's combining them in your daily diet with glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline-rich collagen-containing foods. If you do that in the right ratio, you will, I believe, live a very long time. And I don't believe you have to follow a fasting mimicking diet or avoid animal proteins in order to do it.
Yeah, it's so good, Jordan. I think this is true with politics. It's true with food. Experts and nutritionists and scientists. People will pick their studies, right? And I'm trying to become wiser, and as you walk with humility and listen to a lot of these experts as well that maybe think differently than you and I do. I remember seeing a study years ago that showed that, glycine was an amino acid that likely increased lifespan, but I think it's because maybe it helped balance out that methionine as you're talking about. And so as Jordan's talking about here, your greatest source of these is going to be drinking bone broth. Tremendous benefits. And if you're not getting bone broth daily, take a multi-collagen protein supplement, take a bone broth protein supplement. That's what Jordan and I do every morning for breakfast. I want to encourage you guys to do that and stay healthy. Well, I want to say, everybody, thanks so much for listening to today's podcast. By the way, Jordan, we're going to have him on again. And Jordan and I have a lot of topics to cover. If you're not subscribed here, make sure to subscribe. And hey, leave a review. We'd love to hear from you. How are you liking the show? We'd love your feedback. And next time, we're going to talk about how Jordan beat cancer. We're going to talk about everything from the prayers he prayed, to the supplements he took, to the natural therapies, to the exact diet. We'll talk about on a future episode and more. But again, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Jordan, I would say, hey, I'll talk to you in a week or two or a month, like some of the other people that come on, but I'll probably talk to you in an hour or tomorrow morning. But thanks for coming on and so much and sharing your wisdom today.
It was a real privilege, and excited for people to put the information into action. Josh, I'll leave people with this. I'm an ultimate consumer of information, but I can hear everything under the sun. It doesn't take root until I take action. So please, whether it's using your mind as medicine, whether it's consuming a fermented food or choosing the best supplement, make sure to take an action step. But most of all, whatever you're fighting, whether it's a disease, whether it's a relationship challenge, you have to believe that you are more than a conqueror, and then you'll become just that.
Amen. I love it. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Thanks again to Jordan Rubin for sharing his wisdom today. We'll be back next week with another show. Thanks so much.